and welcome back to Alice Talks Football, and welcome back to another live Manchester United news show where we're talking about, to be honest, the very boring topic of will he stay or will he go? ERIK, Ten Hag. That is the situation. One day he's leaving, one day he's staying, the next day he's leaving. It feels like he was going to go. INEOS had made their mind up he was going to go. He's won the FA Cup. INEOS are now thinking, INEOS' number one was McKenna. He's now going and staying at Ipswich and maybe he's using that for a big new contract. It's all of a sudden gone from reliable sources saying this. Even Romano confirmed we had talks with McKenna, and loads of insiders, I'm talking top reliable sources saying we had our eye on McKenna, we wanted McKenna. It's now going, INEOS decided to sack Ten Hag before the FA Cup final and they wanted McKenna too. Well, McKenna's now going to stay at Ipswich according to Ornstein, and Man United won the FA Cup, and it's now sort of gone like, INEOS maybe having a change of mind. INEOS maybe having a change of thoughts as well. So we're going to dive into all the latest news coming out from insiders who've got information from Inside United about potentially a change of heart of INEOS after talks with the players. Big up Mike in the chat saying Alice summarises things really well about the waffle. I do appreciate that. I always try and get into the news, give my opinion on the news, but then get more into live chats towards the end of the show and get the news out the way. I know a couple people like that I put notes up here, so now before all my live streams I try and get all the information up on the screen so we can go through the info to begin with and straight into it. And I do want to get straight into the news in a second then as well. McKenna, not really a blow. This squad and club culture needs a major overhaul first, and I agree. I think in a year's time, if McKenna has a good season in the Prem with Ipswich and we've sorted out the club, maybe we go for McKenna if we keep Ten Hag another year and he's bad. But you can't rebuild the team until you rebuild the club. And we need to rebuild the club. Otherwise, it's going to take a long time for any new manager coming in. And I agree. So let's dive into news. Let's dive into reports. There's a couple bits and bobs of information coming out that I want to dive into. Now, this has come from Sam C. Now, he often does stuff for the United Stand. That's football. Works for them. But one thing about Sam C is he does get genuinely good information. He's not like just one of those Twitter accounts that spew stuff. He'll be like, yeah, Rashford's going to be in the team. 3 hours later, it's confirmed Rashford's in the team. He doesn't like leak the complete lineup, but he'll say, this is the case, that is the case. He is briefed by someone within United. He has got good sources, and he's been very accurate with his information. He's not got much wrong lately. He's been very, very accurate with his information, and he's dropped a big exclusive today. And he's not Romano, he's not Ornstein, and he didn't say officially Ten Hag is staying or anything like that. And at the end of the day, Ten Hag, as far as we're aware, it's still up in the air. The news is now swaying more towards Ten Hag staying. There's some good stories, not just this story, a couple others, and they're going to get into, which suggest INEOS could be swaying towards Ten Hag staying. But of course, nothing's official until Ornstein or Romano confirm it's official. But Sam has added some really interesting context to what may be going on at Manchester United behind the scenes right now, and I want to dive into that. So he said exclusive. Two key INEOS figures are now advocating for Ten Hag internally, is the understanding. At first they were uncertain, but after a meeting with all the players and key staff, they've developed a more favourable view. Favourable view of ERIK Ten Hag. McKenna, I need to take a sip of water because my throat's just gone. McKenna, who was also accepted by the majority of decision makers at Man United, fell away as an option, and there's little trust in anyone else to do marginally better than Ten Hag next season, but he was on his way out before the final. So what Sam C is sort of suggesting here, and again, it's not Ornstein, it's not Romano, but he has been very good and accurate with his information. I'd say he's on that sort of James Ducker kind of level where he gets information and it checks out. Ornstein, Romano, they are like the gold. Laurie Whitwell's just below that, but he's on a very good level. And he kind of checks out his story. He is saying basically, McKenna was probably the one that was accepted by the majority of decision makers as a Ten Hag replacement. That's the one they had their eye on. A couple of days ago, it was leaked that Ten Hag, before the FA Cup final, it was leaked that INEOS have decided that Ten Hag will go and McKenna will come in. The leaks from reliable sources, now it was Chelsea sources, and Chelsea may have an ulterior motive to leak this because they're a scummy club. But the leaks that were coming out was very much along the lines of, we've chosen McKenna, Ten Hag's gonna go. We're having talks with other managers' reps, so it was a very strong indication if we're having talks with other managers' reps all last week that they're probably going to part ways with Ten Hag no matter what happens in the FA Cup. Now, all of a sudden, McKenna's going to stay at Ipswich. Maybe he's played Man United and to get himself a new big deal at Ipswich. McKenna was their first choice to replace Ten Hag. Now, all of a sudden, are they convinced that Tuchel's a long-term manager? Maybe not. Poch has been, not done well at his last couple of clubs, although I think he should have stayed at Chelsea. Thomas Frank's just a Brentford manager. Gareth Southgate, nobody wants Gareth Southgate. De Zerbi, nobody really wants him. Chelsea going with the Leicester manager over De Zerbi. INEOS may look at it and say, well, McKenna was our ideal choice. He's not coming anymore. Ten Hag has won the FA Cup. The tide is starting to shift. But also, the Man United players, they want Ten Hag to stay. They fought for Ten Hag in the FA Cup and they said they want him to stay. And that takes me back to what Fabrizio Romano said. Now, I am going to get to the rest of the story in a second, but I want to get up something that Fabrizio Romano said that I think could be really big and really, really key news here. So bear with me one sec. But when Fabrizio Romano said this, I think he made a really, really good point in relation to potentially the future of Manchester United as well. I don't believe anything unless it's set in stone to Simon Warner, absolutely. Until you've got an official announcement from Manchester United, Ornstein or Romano, you can't believe anything. But I'm going to get into some other reports in a second, but there is 3 or 4 or 5 journalists now coming out basically saying those inside INEOS are swaying towards Ten Hag staying. When we've been told for the whole last week, Ten Hag sacked, Ten Hag sacked. When we've been told for the last 3 months even that that Ten Hag's most likely to be sacked. We've basically been told for 3 months it's like looking like 90% Ten Hag sacked by every source. There's now a sway. Now, is that guesswork? He's won the FA Cup. The mood is good, so let's just write that he's staying to get more clicks. Is that they're just guessworking right with the mood, or do they know anything? That's the conversation. But let's get into this story. Then I want to get into this chat from Alex here. It was said, and this was said by me, sorry. Last week, Fabrizio Romano said on the United stand, and this Fabrizio Romano was interviewed on the United stand last week, and he said these words. The result of the FA Cup final will be important, but not the be-all and end-all. He said the performance and mentality throughout the game will be judged in relation to Ten Hag. Job. Romano said it's the performance and the mentality throughout the game that's judged in Ten Hag's job. What do we see performance-wise? Ten Hag tactically spot on. What do we see mentality-wise? The players given 100%. Potentially, that game could save his job because the players are playing for the manager and the manager's got his tactics absolutely spot on. And remember this. This is what I added to context. On Saturday, we saw the Man United players fight and give 100%. They were playing for their manager. Comments post-match from Evans showed his support for Ten Hag and why he deserves time, notably bringing up the injuries and the fact that Ten Hag hasn't been able to play the football he wants. If you go into Johnny Evans' interview, he said this manager's a good guy, he's a good coach. I believe he can succeed with less injuries. Obviously, he wants to play attacking football. He's not been able to do that this season because of the injuries, are basically the words that came out of Johnny Evans' mouth as well. And you add to that info, very good sources said, that Ten Hag will be sacked last week, and it's been confirmed that INEOS, contacted other managers' reps, which is not the behaviour of a club that's going to keep their manager. But now all of a sudden they're delaying it. Are they delaying it because they're doing a U-turn on Ten Hag's decision, which we're going to get into, more reports on that? Are they delaying it because they just want a good time to sack him? Are they delaying it because Melissa Reddy said they don't want to do a Bayern Munich and repeat the mistakes of Bayern Munich, and they want to make sure they've got their next manager lined up so they can bring in him as quick as possible if they sack Ten Hag? There's multiple potential reasons behind that. But let me just get into the super chat. Thank you very much, Rob, for the super chat, who said, superb content, keep, bench, sell. Man United manager, Neil Warnock, Ryan Giggs and Gareth Southgate. That's difficult. I'd probably pick Southgate to keep out of that lot. Ryan Giggs to bench and Warnock to sell, which I can't believe I'm saying that because you know me, I'm not the biggest fan of Southgate, if you know me as well. Listen, people, please do hit that like button if you have not already, and of course subscribe down below to Alice Talks Football if you're new and want to stay up to date with all the latest Manchester United news, transfer news, updates and more. We've got a lot to get into as well. I was going to get a chat up, but I can't find it. This was the chat from Alex I wanted to get up. INEOS are not really letting much at all leak out. That's why it's different reports every day. And I think that's the one thing. And I think one thing before I get into the rest of the story, and one thing before I get into the rest of the news, is we've got to remember this with INEOS. Barada wasn't leaked out. Wilcox got leaked out a little bit, but not massively. When INEOS wants someone, they kind of get it done and they don't let the media know. And I think ultimately the media is just doing guesswork. So I think INEOS know what they're going to do. And I do think ultimately the media is doing guesswork. But I do think the mood was Ten Hag was going to be sacked. The mood is now Ten Hag's going to stay. Is that guesswork, or is certain bits of information coming out? Which brings us, of course, back into the news, back into the stories that I do want to cover. And guys, please do go ahead and hit that like button. And of course, subscribe down below because we've got lots to get into. Going back into the main stories that have come out, saying that 2 key INEOS figures are now advocating for Ten Hag internally. It's understanding at first they were uncertain, but after a meeting with players and key staff, they developed a more favourable view of Ten Hag. So there are INEOS figures swaying towards Erik Ten Hag staying at the club and now supporting the idea of Ten Hag staying at the club post-meeting. And it was also said that McKenna was accepted as, the best choice by decision makers. That now that's unlikely to happen. There's more swaying and favouritism towards Ten Hag staying, which brings us into the rest of the story. It's been noted that injuries have significantly impacted the team performance, contributing to some of the challenges faced on the field. Also, the off-field issues regarding Anthony, Greenwood, Sancho and Rashford. It was said how these off-field issues have been handled has garnered positive feedback, especially from INEOS, recognising their efforts to maintain professionalism and address problems effectively. And I want to dive into that, and I want to add some bits of information to that, of course. So basically, one interesting thing that's sort of been going about, and one interesting thing that's been said is obviously Jason Wilcox doing an overview of United. Now, Jason Wilcox formerly worked at Manchester City. He did an overview of Ten Hag and Ten Hag's trainings, and insiders said that Jason Wilcox, when he spent 2 weeks really shadowing Ten Hag and his work and learning about Ten Hag and analysing United, had a lot of sympathy for Ten Hag when he realised the injuries, the setbacks, how that really impacts Ten Hag's style of play. Because yes, every team has had injuries, but one point for Ten Hag is he's had injuries to Luke Shaw and Martinez, who his whole build-up relies on and his on-the-ball possession work relies on. Casemiro and Eriksen don't have the legs to play how he wants to do in midfield. And while the tactics have been good and we've been outplayed by a lot worse teams, there is elements of these players that he did lose were just a different level of key. It's not like you've lost a Wan-Bissaka for most of the season or a Maguire for most of the season. You've lost so many key players, and to be fair, Maguire has missed most of the season and Wan-Bissaka missed most of the first half of the season. And it was said that actually one thing is those inside United that were doing the review on Ten Hag said, well, look at the injuries, look at the setbacks, 2 trophies in 2 years, look where this club has been the last 10 years. Yes, the football is bad. Yes, statistically it's worse. It's Man United's worst ever season, but there's a reason most of the fans back this guy because they know the problem is the club. And Jim Ratcliffe said it himself in an interview. He said the problem at Manchester United is the environment. You can't judge a manager until he's in the right environment. And if Jim Ratcliffe sticks with that word, then he can't fully judge Ten Hag and decide to sack Ten Hag until he's in the right environment. The thing is, if they want to keep Ten Hag, they're going to have to give him a new contract and take that risk as well, which I think it was interesting to add. No one had the same amount of levels of key injuries. Arsenal would have been lucky to make top 4 of our injuries. That's the thing. And Arsenal fans are going to give me stick if they're watching. But we lost Varane and Martinez for 80% of the season. That is Arsenal losing Gabriel and Saliba for 80% of their season. Arsenal had the best defensive record in the league. If Arsenal lost Gabriel and Saliba, that means they'd have to play Ben White centre-back with Cedric or someone, which would then mean right back would have been maybe Tomiyasu if fit and Zinchenko left back. Potentially Kivior playing more. Let's be honest, if Arsenal had lost their 2 main centre-backs for the majority of last season, Man City would have walked away with the league. They probably would have finished 4th where Villa is, or 3rd. Liverpool would have finished above them. People don't realise that we lost our 2 main centre-backs and our left-back who's key in build-up. Could be our best midfielder, who obviously should have been our best midfielder at the start of the season, but he was out for the first half of the season. Casemiro's not had a good season, but he's missed half the season. Maguire isn't seen as key, but when Varane and Martinez have missed so much of the season, when Maguire's missed so much of the season on top of that, that's hard as well. So you have to look at it and say, well, look at the players that Ten Hag has been missing. If Arsenal were missing their 2 best centre-backs, yes, they would not have had the season that they had. Now, that's not me making an excuse for Ten Hag. That's not me saying, oh, Ten Hag is blameless. I mean, the tactics have been awful. The underlying numbers are awful. I'm not blind to the fact that Ten Hag played some of the worst football in Man United history last season, and that's very difficult because we played some crap football under Van Gaal. We played some crap football under Mourinho's. But you have to look at the injuries, and you can't dismiss that. And I think people are dismissing that. Oh, other teams have had injuries, but look at the injuries and the importance of them as well. Our injuries would be like Arsenal having no Saliba or Gabriel for most of the season and no Rice for half the season and only one young number 9 up front. Exactly. And Arteta would have struggled. And look what Arteta has with his full squad. Challenges Manchester City to the final day of the season. All I'm saying is get Ten Hag 5 key signings that can play his style of football. Main squad stays fit. Ten Hag could definitely not challenge, but Ten Hag could be up there like Liverpool were and then drop off in March. I think he can. I think there's a very good manager in Ten Hag, and I think he's capable of it. Big up, guys. We've got over 530 people live right now. Let's go and see if we can hit 250 likes. If half of you guys just hit that like button right now, we're so close to reaching the target. Look, there's no official news coming out yet on if Ten Hag is staying or going, but lots of reports are coming out indicating Ten Hag is set to stay. When we get official news and updates on Ten Hag's future, if he's going to stay or if he's going to go, I will be live right away to announce that. So if you do want to stay up to date, if you guys want to stay up to date on all the latest Manchester United news in terms of transfer news, I think we're going to get a big story in Elise next week for some things I'm hearing behind the scenes. So there's going to be some big Elise stories, some big centre-back signing expected in 2 weeks. Obviously, the Ten Hag situation. Make sure you're subscribed to stay up to date with all the latest news. But I want to continue by going back into the story. It's been noted that injuries have significantly impacted the team performance, contributing to some of the challenges faced. Obviously, the Rashford, the incident, the Sancho incident, the Griezmann incident, and the Anthony incident hasn't felt. And then he also looked at it and said, well, you know what? There's been a lot of issues off the field that Ten Hag's had to deal with that other managers haven't. There's been a lot of injuries. The club has been a mess under every single manager since Ten Hag. So maybe Ten Hag's not the problem and maybe we need to change the club before we change the manager. And that added on to the fact that apparently key Man United players, and this isn't from Sam's report, but there was a report that I did and I read out in a video 2 days ago that apparently key Man United players, I'm talking Bruno Fernandes and Garnacho, said to INEOS they want Ten Hag to stay. And Johnny Evans made it clear that he wants Ten Hag to stay. Delot made it clear that he wants Man United to stay. Key players who will be in INEOS' plan next season, Bruno, Garnacho, Delot, maybe not Johnny Evans, made it clear they want Ten Hag to stay. So you've got players now advocating for Ten Hag to stay. You've got fans, most of them are like 84% of fans want Ten Hag in, which obviously they're not going to completely listen to the fans, but they're going to somewhat hear it. The number one choice to replace Ten Hag, McKenna, is now set to stay at Ipswich, and now the other options are Thomas Frank and Southgate, who aren't the most convincing. INEOS may look at that and say, well, we did want to sack Ten Hag. We had decided we were going to sack Ten Hag, but he's won the FA Cup. When he had his two main players back from injury, look how much better Man United played against Man City, who just won the league, who hadn't lost a game since November. That were 35 games unbeaten, 74 games unbeaten with Rodri in the squad. Ten Hag is the first manager to beat Rodri in 74 games. And people will say City had an off day, City had an off day. But if Arteta did that, if Klopp did that, the media would be licking up their arse. They would be. And maybe INEOS will say, you know what, 74-game unbeaten streak of Rodri ended. 35-game unbeaten streak of Man City ended. Because Real Madrid, that ended in a draw. They won it on penalties. Ended. And that was the first game since Wolves away that he had Martinez and Varane at the back. And what was our best performance in the Premier League? Wolves away in the first half, not the second half. Wolves away in the first half. And that was the last game Martinez and Varane played together, was Wolves away. And look how much better we play. I'm not saying, we're going to miraculously win the league if Varane and Martinez were fit all season. But if Varane and Martinez were fit all season, I think we'd have got fourth place. I think we'd have finished above Villa and we'd have got fourth place because there's 8 points between us and Villa. Are you telling me if Varane and Martinez were fit all season, we'd pick up 8 more points? We probably would. Like, there was 2 points dropped to Burnley. I think Chelsea wouldn't have dropped those silly points last minute, so that could have been 4 points. Brentford, we probably could have defended out that league. That would have been, again, 6 points. And I think Bournemouth, we could have won that game. That would have been 7-8 points. I could think on the top of my head of recent games. I think had Varane and Martinez been fit all season, we finish above Villa. No, not taking that away from Villa, but I think we would. I really do as well. Martinez was top 4 breaker. Look at last season. Last season was a good season. 3rd place, Carabao Cup. But wasn't the last 2 months of last season horrific? It absolutely was. Who got injured? Varane and Martinez. For me, replacing Varane is just as important as getting that DM to partner Kobe and Bruno. Just as important. But I generally believe that if INEOS gave Ten Hag time with the right signings and we got over this injury trouble, and to be fair, the biggest thing and the most important thing INEOS need to do is sack the medical staff, and we're going to talk about INEOS sacking people in a second. There's a big story coming in that Ten Hag can succeed. Ultimately, at the end of the day, if INEOS do sack Ten Hag, I have to say, well, statistically, it was our worst ever season in the Premier League. It statistically was our worst season in the Premier League, and we played awful football, and I can understand if they sack Ten Hag. It's just if you sack Ten Hag and you replace him with Thomas Frank or Southgate, is it really worth the fan outrage of sacking Ten Hag to get in a lesser candidate? Now, Melissa Reddy's report suggests that Man United would not announce they're sacking Ten Hag unless they had their candidate to replace Ten Hag sorted up. They don't want to do what Bayern Munich did. Sack Tuchel, can't get a replacement, had to go for company. Man United might say, okay, we're going to sack Ten Hag for Tuchel. Wait a sec, you know what? Tuchel, probably, maybe not the right fit. Let's stay with him because we're not going to get Thomas Frank. We're not going to get Southgate because they're not good enough. So I think there's all those sort of things to keep an eye on. But I do actually want to get into the news about INEOS sacking multiple figures because INEOS want to be clear out as well. Let me just take a sip of water and get into this story. It was said, breaking, Man United staff have been offered early payment of an annual bonus if they resign next Wednesday as part of Sir Jim Ratcliffe's edict to get all the employees into the club's offices and push him to trim the workforce. I think this is a big story, and it may not seem like a big story, but I'm going to explain why I think this is a big story in just a second. Essentially, INEOS are basically paying staff to be made redundant. INEOS want to sack loads of staff. Man United have got over 1,000 employees. Man United have got more employees than any other club, but Man United have some of the least productive employees in the league. Sir Jim Ratcliffe sent out a disgrace email to most of our employees. Sir Jim Ratcliffe is going to cut our workforce down by 40%. He's banning working from home. So Jim Ratcliffe's going to have less employees, but them doing more work. And that, again, is part of resetting the club. We can't rebuild the team till we reset the club and we reset the club culture. And all those employees that maybe only earn, in a year what some of those footballers earn in a day, are so important to resetting the environment of the club. And INEOS basically want to get rid of a bulk of them. And they've said to them, if you resign by next Wednesday, we'll give you an early payment of an annual bonus. We'll give you money to resign. That's how serious Ratcliffe is. They are paying them to resign. He wants them out. When I say Ratcliffe wants to change every aspect about this club, he absolutely wants to change every aspect. Which could bring it back to Ten Hag of, well, if he's changing Cliff Batty on the board, if he's getting rid of Arnold, he's getting rid of Woodward, he's getting rid of scouts, he's getting rid of everyone, he's probably going to get rid of Ten Hag. You could say that. Although McKenna, the number one replacement, is now being pushed away. But I think that's massive that Man United have asked staff to voluntarily resign and is paying them. He's paying them to voluntarily resign. For me, I think that's a big statement. I do. I think, look, at the end of the day, we can only judge INEOS in a couple of years' time. They have enabled the Glazers to stay at the club. I have my speculation and my concerns around INEOS. I don't like the lack of communication around Ten Hag's job and that they're not quieting the media who've been ganging up on some of our players in Ten Hag. But ultimately, most of what INEOS has done so far is good. It's got me impressed. But at the end of the day, actions speak louder than the words, and we'll judge where we are in 3 years. I like a lot of their ideas. I was sceptical when INEOS came in, but one thing is they need to improve their recruitment. I'm fed up of the speculation that's completely and utterly around Ten Hag. If we appoint De Zerbi next year, we're going to be 11th. De Zerbi's not an upgrade on Ten Hag. I'm sorry. People are talking about, oh yeah, but De Zerbi ball is so much better than Ten Hag ball. Okay, Ten Hag ball has been crap this season, but compare Ten Hag's football at Ajax and De Zerbi's football at Brighton. Ten Hag's football at Ajax is better than De Zerbi's football at Brighton. De Zerbi comes to United playing good football at Brighton. Oh wait, he doesn't have the players at Man United to play good football. I'm not people saying sack Ten Hag, bring in De Zerbi, he plays such good football. We were literally talking about how good football Ten Hag played at Ajax. He comes to United, he can't do that. That could be the same for De Zerbi. Just because they're playing better than football than Ten Hag in their club doesn't mean they're going to be able to play better football than Ten Hag with the Man United players. People are forgetting, if Ten Hag played crap football at Ajax, I think most fans would want him out. But people know that Ten Hag played very good football at Ajax. Rangnick even plays good football, but they both came to United and they couldn't play good football. People are starting to realise that. I don't rate De Zerbi much at all. He's stubborn to fault and no plan B. He will not pivot while being battered 5-0. Exactly. De Zerbi is worse than Ten Hag. De Zerbi's style of play at Brighton is no better than Ten Hag's style of play at Ajax, in my opinion. I think Thomas Frank's a better manager than De Zerbi. I think Graham Potter's a better manager than De Zerbi. I think De Zerbi is a good manager, but he is stubborn. And we complain about Ten Hag being stubborn. He's got no plan B whatsoever. Yes, he did well with that Brighton squad. But again, if he wants to play the football he wants to play, he needs highly technical players. He would then have to get those players in at United. Ten Hag also needs highly technical players to play the football he wants to play. Big up Diego in the chat. How you doing? Diego says, your owners taking out dividends and now INEOS doing the dirty work, getting rid of the low-paid employees. Unbelievable, but surprising. I mean, at the end of the day, the most important thing is to get the Glazers out and to stop the Glazers taking out dividends. And the biggest thing that worries me is Joel Glazer could be having a say in this manager decision as well. I prefer Thomas Frank out of the names mentioned. Thomas Frank, I would rather have than De Zerbi. And people will call me crazy, but I would. And as John said, when you hear De Zerbi, when you hear Southgate, when you hear Poch, when you hear Thomas Frank, I like Pochettino. I think he's a good manager, and I don't think Chelsea should have sacked him. But none of them stand out as, yes, you got to sack Ten Hag for him. If Pep Guardiola's on the market, we can all agree, sack Ten Hag, bring in Pep Guardiola if possible, because Pep Guardiola is an upgrade on Ten Hag. But I don't look at Thomas Frank and think, yeah, if we sack Ten Hag, it's the right decision because we're getting Thomas Frank in. I'd be saying, okay, we sacked Ten Hag, can't completely blame INEOS for sacking Ten Hag because this season's been crap, but are we convinced? Are we convinced Thomas Frank's the man to move Man United forward? The ruthlessness should start at the top with multi-millionaires first and foremost. Cuts have to be made but not pleasant on those on regular wages. Of course. That's a really good point from Alex. I like the ruthlessness of them paying staff to leave, but at the end of the day, the most important changes are those who are on the big money. Those at the top, the decision makers, and that's who we need to cut out first. Interestingly, this was also said by Sam C. He said that Ten Hag's future does remain unconfirmed and uncertain. Man United are not expecting sources. Man United sources are not expecting an imminent outcome of the INEOS review. So Sam C said, look, the shift is turning towards those key figures in INEOS supporting Ten Hag because players support him and everything. But he did mention that, while INEOS are sympathetic of the injuries Ten Hag have had to deal with, while INEOS know that Ten Hag's had a lot of key players missing and there's a lot of positivity and there's people in the INEOS camp fighting for Ten Hag to stay, there's players in the Man United camp fighting for Ten Hag to stay, Sam C did add to that Ten Hag's future, of course, remains unconfirmed and uncertain. The rumour and the noise that's coming out, the sources are saying, okay, those inside INEOS are actually leaning towards more Ten Hag staying than they were before. There's definitely a shift in how they feel around Ten Hag and the possibility of Ten Hag staying. Those in INEOS are leaning to it, but he just says, I've got to confirm this. Remember, nothing is set in stone, nothing is official, nothing is done. That doesn't mean he's staying, but it seems to be swaying that way that he is staying, of course. Big up everybody in the chat. Please do hit that like button, of course. Subscribe down below if you're new. Fabrizio Romano has just said Rodrigo not planning to leave Real Madrid. He's super happy at the club and no changes are expected at all. Rodrigo was linked to a move to Liverpool earlier as well. So that's good because Rodrigo's a good player and we don't want Liverpool signing any good players as well. Apparently Marcus Rashford is in talks with Arsenal. Yes, there is a lot of talks, rumours and reports going on that Marcus Rashford is having talks with Arsenal and Arteta over a move. I will say this. There has been nothing credible coming out about Rashford and Arsenal. It's not come from Ornstein. It's not come from Romano. It's come from Arsenal aggregator accounts claiming Marcus Rashford is in talks to join Arsenal in a £60 million deal. No one reliable has said it at all. One of the main sources is someone called AFC AM Den, who's got 150k followers, but he's an ITK. And he said that Mikel Arteta and Marcus Rashford held talks on a potential summer move over the past few weeks. There's interest on both sides, but it's unknown whether Manchester United would sell to Arsenal. Now, I'm going to get that up on the screen so you guys can see. I don't think it's true. I don't think it's reliable. Apparently, he used to be really reliable for Arsenal back in the day. Apparently, he used to be like a good source for Arsenal back in the day, but it's fallen off this guy. And this guy is claiming that Mikel Arteta and Rashford have had, talks recently and that both are interested in the move, but will Manchester United sell to Arsenal? I don't see it happening. I don't see it happening at all, to be honest. And unless Romano and Ornstein or a source I trust got on it, it's a lot of rumours and speculation. I couldn't say for sure that it happens. Someone said swap Rashford for Martinelli. Rashford's better than Martinelli. There's a reason Arsenal are buying him because Martinelli's been worse than Rashford this season and Rashford's had a bad season as well. Mbappe and Endrick coming in, Real will eventually sell someone up front. They have to. They've got Endrick. You're absolutely right. Endrick, Mbappe, Vinicius, of course. Also, how much would you sell Rashford to Arsenal for? 100 million. 100 million price tag's what I put on Rashford. People saying sell him for 60 million. You can get. I would not sell Rashford for 60 million. He's worth more than that. Rashford is a better player than social media thinks, than fans think. Rashford had a crap season, but he's a better player than people think. If Rafael Villar and Kvaratskhelia are being quoted 150 million, we should be able to get 100 million for Rashford, especially because it'll go into a Premier League rival. If they're going to pay 65 million for Kai Havertz, who had 3 average seasons at Chelsea, but pay 60 million for Marcus Rashford, that's had 2 30-goal seasons at United, but he's just had 1 bad season now, that's crazy. If you pay 65 million for Havertz, think about what Rashford's done. Rashford's best season is better than Havertz's best season. 100 million for Rashford. 100 million for Rashford. People call me crazy. But 100 million. We're not Man United. We're going to give you our star player, our academy boy, for 60 million because he's had a bad season and some fans have turned on him. 100 million as well. 100 million. 100 million it'll be considered. But look, I don't think there's much in that Rashford to Arsenal news. I really don't. I think it's a lot of it is speculation fuel, to be honest, as well. Continuing on, there is news of Wan-Bissaka going to Italy, but again, I think that could happen, but only for the right price. Wish we got Grealish instead of Donny van de Beek those years ago. He doesn't fit City at all, but I think he would have been brilliant for us. I agree, because Grealish, when we were in for him, was a 45 million release clause on him. Then he had a good season at Villa. Then he went for 100 million. We went for Donny van de Beek for the simple fact that he was about 5 million cheaper. If we'd have got Grealish instead of Donny van de Beek, he can play attacking midfield, he can play left wing, he would have been way more suited to what we want to do. 100%. Grealish is a Man United type of player, not a Man City type of player. I think, I don't know. I've never seen him as a Pep kind of player, to be fair as well. Worst decision made by INEOS. What's the worst decision made by INEOS? The best decision INEOS can make is to kick Joel and Abraham Glazer out and buy them out, but I don't think that's really in their hands as well. I'm not even crazy. Dylan to 2028, never 60 million. Exactly. You can get 100 million for Marcus Rashford. You can get 100 million for Marcus Rashford, because I tell you what, Marcus Rashford would join Arsenal and we'd be saying, why do we sell him? I think Rashford's had a crap season. I can understand fans being upset with him because of the Belfast incident. He's not been good enough, and he does this: good season, crap season, good season, crap season. He's not consistent enough. But I think people won't realise Rashford's talent till he leaves. This guy has been playing for Man United in their worst ever era, and in 3 of the last 5 seasons, he's carried us on his back in the worst ever era. This guy is going to be like Man United's 5th highest all-time goal scorer in our worst ever era. Imagine the numbers he'd be putting up under Fergie in a good system, in a good environment. I do think that Rashford's too disrespected in this fan base. I can see the frustration, but I think people saying sell Rashford 50 million. I think Rashford is almost overhated as well. Rashford 110 million, they can have him. He won't be sold though. Rashford is a good player. He will come good for us next season. Jack is a United player, not City player. I completely agree with Gay in there. Just think Rashi's cycle with us is over. He doesn't seem happy and probably could use a change of scenery. And that's my biggest concern with Rashford. It's not about is he good enough. It's does he want to be here? Because if he doesn't want to be here, he's not going to be good enough. And, I think he loves Man United and I think he wants to be here, but I think it's more that he's fallen out of football. He doesn't look happy. And when Rashford's not happy, he's not good. And Rashford doesn't look happy. He doesn't look like he's enjoying himself. And I think that's a problem. He needs to be enjoying himself to be playing football well. And that's my biggest concern. Left back's definitely a position we need. Alice, if Rashford goes to Arsenal, he'd be the reverse from Van Persie to Man United and would win them the title. And that would be the worst nightmare ever, especially because Pep's probably going to leave Man City as well. So then Arsenal have a particular period where they could actually exert some dominance as well, and then Rashford can make things happen as well. He was good enough. He was not good enough this year, but still, come on, 4-year contract, big player, big media player. Let's not forget that. This is bringing more money, 100%. 60 million when they paid 65 million for Havertz. What an absolute joke. What an absolute joke. Big up everybody in the chat. Please do hit that like button if you have not already. And of course, subscribe down below to Alice Talks Football if you're new and want to stay up to date with all the latest Manchester United news, transfer news, takeover news, and more obviously being discussed on the show. There's obviously news coming out saying that it's more likely that Ten Hag will stay after INEOS' recent meeting. Key figures within INEOS are leaning towards the idea of ERIK Ten Hag staying as Manchester United, which is great news. But again, nothing is official, nothing is confirmed, no official has been made on Ten Hag's future, but those inside INEOS are apparently leaning towards him staying after players have made it clear they want Ten Hag to stay as well. Rashford's not on 350k a week. I think he's on 250k a week, which is still a lot. Amrabat 30 million. Look, Amrabat, if we sign 2 midfielders and Amrabat's the second one on a 20 million deal, fares. But we need to bring in a new midfielder because ultimately Amrabat wasn't good enough this season. Yes, he wasn't played. Yes, he wasn't given enough opportunities. But we need to sign a midfielder, and then maybe because we sell Eriksen and Casemiro, Amrabat could be the second one that comes in. Would you sell Rashford if you know that we could get Kvaratskhelia? No, because I think again I'm not convinced on him, to be fair. I mean, Kvaratskhelia is a good player, but I don't know. I think he's a little overrated. I don't know how I feel about Kvaratskhelia. I don't. Again, he only got 2 more goals than Rashford this season. I don't know. I'd probably stick with Rashford, to be fair. I think Rashford's a better player than he gets credit for, and people call me crazy as well. If United can't decide what they're going to do with the manager until 3 weeks after the season ends, doesn't bode well for actually getting business done in the summer. It doesn't. INEOS, if we don't know by next week, I will start to have a big problem with how INEOS are going about this. I will, because we need to know by next week. Ten Hag needs to know. It doesn't help the transfer plans, the speculation, attracting new players in. There needs to be something cleared out by next week. Thank you very much, Rob, for becoming a member. Appreciate that. Appreciate the support as well. Someone said keep Amrabat. Maybe as a squad player, but we do need to sign a new midfielder. I don't think signing Amrabat will solve our midfield issues because he was here this season and the midfield issues were still there. But I think as a depth player, he's all right, especially if we're going to lose both Casemiro and Eriksen as well. Amrabat needs to stay. I think he has a proper pre-season, will be the best of him. I think Amrabat's had more good performances than bad, and I think there's been a negative narrative around Amrabat. I would try and do what Tottenham had done with Werner and extend the loan. I'd try and extend Amrabat's loan so we don't have to pay the full money for him, and we could get him on another loan deal for another maybe 8 million this year as well. We need 2 centre-back signs. If we only sign one, maybe keep Amrabat. Yeah, that's the way I see it, because we need two new midfielders. Bring one in, maybe bring in Amrabat, maybe bring in 2. That's the way I see it as well. Yeah. But listen, people, I am going to wrap up the live stream in a second. Martial's replacing now. He's announced he's leaving, of course. We've known Martial's leaving for a while. And we have an option to buy Amrabat, but I think it's a little bit too much. Problem is the loan extension will take it over to 15 million quid in loan fees, which is pretty crazy for a player that's been all right on loan, but nothing special as well. But listen, people, I'm going to wrap up the live show here. Just wanted to do a short live show to talk about more news coming out. The 10 Hag is set to stay. Big updates in that sense. Please do go ahead and hit that like button if you haven't already. Of course, subscribe down below if you're new. I will be back tomorrow with a short 10-minute news update. And then tomorrow evening, I'll be back with a live stream to talk about all the latest Manchester United news and updates, probably on Ten Hag. Tomorrow's video will probably be titled Ten Hag is getting sacked, because it seems to change every week. But I do want to big up everybody that's tuned in. Thank you for watching. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. See you next time. Bye.